The Spanish Civil War is one of the most interesting conflicts of the 20th century. When you think about wars of the last 100 years, almost everyone thinks of World War I and World War II, and rightfully so. They were two of the biggest wars in human history. But what's often overlooked is the interwar period between them and how it shaped the world order. It was during this time that the Spanish Civil War occurred, earning its reputation as the dress rehearsal for World War II. It pitted many of the same ideological forces against each other that would later fight globally. Nationalism versus communism, Christianity against secularism, and tradition against revolution. Beginning in 1936, the unstable Second Spanish Republic imploded into a brutal conflict that would leave 500,000 dead and go down in history as the Spanish Civil War. The struggle saw an alliance of monarchists, phalangists, traditionalists, landowners, and others battling for supremacy against a coalition of communists, anarchists, liberals, and Republican forces. In this video, we'll explore what led to this conflict, the key factors that brought down the Second Spanish Republic, and what it takes to push a nation into civil war. To say that the early 20th century was an explosive time in Europe would be an understatement. World War I led to the deaths of an estimated 30 million people and caused four major European empires, the German, Russian, Austrian, and Ottoman, to fall. The Spanish flu then killed another 25 million. This deadly era was so traumatic that those born between 1883 and 1900 became known as the Lost Generation. While Spain remained neutral in World War I, it faced its own deep problems. The nation was a shadow of its former empire, having lost most of its overseas colonies in the 1800s. At home, Spain could not decide on its future. It had undergone multiple civil conflicts between liberals and conservatives over the kind of government the country should have. The general trend was the gradual removal of power from the king and the church, shifting it toward parliamentary bodies. Between 1874 and 1931, Spain lived through the Restoration period as a monarchy led by a restored king from the House of Bourbon. However, under the liberal 1876 constitution, the king was not absolute and had to work with parliament. The parliamentary system was dysfunctional, with few prime ministers able to achieve much. The country seemed stuck in a malaise. As the Industrial Revolution spread through Spain, it became clear that major changes were necessary. By the 1920s, Spain faced multiple crises. A costly colonial war in Morocco drained the government's finances. At the same time, communist and anarchist ideas were rising across Europe. The successful Bolshevik Revolution in Russia and the Republican Revolution in Germany inspired liberals and Marxists in Spain to push for similar uprisings. Republicans wanted to abolish the old order and create a democracy based on the ideals of the French Revolution, liberty, equality, and fraternity. They sought to drastically reduce or destroy the power of the monarchy, the Catholic Church, and the military. Marxists, meanwhile, pushed for a workers' revolution. Some were anarchists who wanted workers to rule themselves, while others looked to the Soviet Union as a model. All agreed that capitalism had to be abolished, along with those they saw as enabling it. Many poor Spaniards were drawn to these ideas because they felt unfairly treated by landowners. Spain had been slow to adopt pro-worker reforms that other industrial nations already had. Fueled by international propaganda, Republicans and Marxists staged strikes, street violence, and chaos that overwhelmed the government. Losing control of public order, King Alfonso XIII allowed the military to take over in 1923. Captain General Miguel Primo de Rivera launched a bloodless coup, dissolved parliament, and suspended the 1876 Constitution. The coup's backers saw the parliamentary system as corrupt and harmful to Spain's national interests. The military government brought temporary stability, but the 1929 Wall Street crash and the Great Depression destroyed any chance of lasting success. With the economy collapsing, the king and military withdrew support, and Primo de Rivera resigned. In April 1931, elections were held and Republicans won decisively in major cities. King Alfonso abdicated and fled into exile. The Republicans declared Spain a republic and abolished the monarchy. However, peace and stability remained elusive. The new republic immediately faced serious problems. Catalonia and the Basque Country demanded independence, threatening the breakup of Spain. To calm tensions, the Republic granted them greater autonomy, but separatist feelings persisted. The Catholic Church correctly sensed the Republic would be hostile toward it. The government also moved to reduce the military's political influence. The 1930s depression hit Spain hard. Iron production fell 33%, steel by 50%, and unemployment soared while wages were cut. In this dire economic climate, political infighting between left and right pushed Spain toward catastrophe. The new parliament, dominated by socialists and middle-class radicals, began revoking the historic privileges of the Catholic Church. Separation of church and state was enacted, priests lost salaries, church properties were confiscated, Jesuits were expelled, Catholic education ended, and women gained the right to vote. These changes shattered a 1,000-year partnership between the church and Spanish government, but matters grew far worse. Communist and anarchist factions despised Christianity, viewing it as a tool of the bourgeoisie. Prime Minister Manuel Azana declared that Spain would no longer be a Catholic nation. Stoked by this rhetoric, radical groups burned churches and murdered priests. The Republican government did little to stop the violence. Many army officers were forced into early retirement, large estates were nationalized, and industrial wages were raised at the expense of business owners. By attacking the military, industrialists, landowners, and the church all at once, the government created powerful enemies who increasingly looked abroad for support, especially to fascist Italy and Nazi Germany, both opposed to communism. In 1932, the first coup attempt against the Republic failed, but it led to the creation of the right-wing CETA party to defend the church and landowners. The left also grew more radical, with anarchists and syndicalists organizing strikes and riots. After violent clashes and Azana's resignation, new elections in 1933 brought the right to power. The right-wing government reversed many left-wing reforms, angering the left. The various left-wing parties united into the Popular Front and responded with more strikes, riots, and violence. In 1934, coal miners in Asturias launched a full revolution but were crushed by the army under General Francisco Franco. With chaos mounting, another election was called for February 1936 amid intimidation and political murder. The Popular Front won a narrow and disputed victory. Many on the right viewed the government as illegitimate due to fraud and violence. Tensions exploded further as the new government released political prisoners and law and order collapsed. Spain had become a powder keg. The final spark came in July 1936 when monarchist leader José Calvo Sotelo was assassinated by left-wing militia. Right-wing forces and the military, who had been secretly planning since February, now launched their revolt. General Franco seized control of Spanish Morocco with Spain's best troops and prepared to invade the mainland. The Republican government armed workers to resist, but the battle lines were drawn. The Spanish Civil War had begun.